You probably picture your ancient ancestors as hunters, spear in hand, tracking something big across open grassland, coming home as the winner of the encounter, and eventually, that picture becomes true. But for most of the time humans have existed, it was backwards. You weren't the hunter, you were the prey. Picture it honestly. No claws, no fangs, skin that tears easily, legs that can't outrun a hyena, can't outrun a big cat, can't even outrun a mid-sized dog. Your ancestors stood upright, which is great for spotting danger far away, but terrible for the first few million years, because standing upright also makes you slower over short distances than almost anything trying to eat you. You were a slow, soft, loud-smelling animal walking across land shared with some of the most efficient killing machines evolution has ever produced. So the honest question isn't, how did ancient humans hunt? It's, what was hunting them? And the fossil record actually answers that question in a surprisingly specific way, because the animals that killed early humans left their signatures behind, literally carved into bone. Start with the sky. In 1924 in South Africa, researchers found the skull of a small child, roughly 3 years old, who lived almost 3 million years ago. It became known as the Taung child, one of the most famous fossils in the story of human origins. For decades, nobody could fully explain the strange damage on its skull. Then, in 1995, two researchers, Lee Berger and Ron Clark, took a closer look at the eye sockets. They found small puncture marks and jagged tears at the base of each socket. That exact kind of damage shows up in modern primate skulls too, but only from one specific cause. It's what happens when a large bird of prey, like a crowned eagle, kills a primate, carries it into a nest, and rips the eyes out with its talons and beak to get to the brain. The Taung child wasn't just found near a predator's kill site, it likely was the kill. A child snatched from the ground and carried off into the sky is not the story you'd expect at the root of the human family tree, but it's the one the bone damage tells. Now go from the sky to the trees. In another South African cave called Swartkrans, a researcher named C.K. Brain spent years asking a deceptively simple question. Everyone assumed early humans had lived in these caves. Brain looked closer and found something different. He examined a skull from a young Paranthropus robustus, an early hominin relative, and found 2 puncture holes in the top of the head. He compared the spacing of those 2 holes to fossil leopard jaws from the same site. They matched perfectly the exact width between a leopard's lower canine teeth. Brain realized these caves weren't ancient human homes. They were leopard dining rooms. Big cats, then and now, like to haul their kills up into trees or into rocky overhangs, away from scavengers to eat in peace. The bones piling up in those caves weren't evidence of early humans living safely inside. They were leftovers. And it wasn't only eagles and leopards. Hyenas with jaws strong enough to crack open bone for the marrow inside were common across the same landscapes. And unlike a leopard, they often hunted in coordinated packs, which made them dangerous even to a group of early humans standing together. Big cats, larger and more specialized than any leopard alive today, built specifically for taking down mid-sized prey, stalked the same grasslands. Crocodiles waited at the one resource every early human group couldn't avoid needing every single day: water. Anywhere your ancestors had to kneel down to drink or wade across a river to reach better ground, something could be waiting just beneath the surface, motionless, for as long as it took. The danger wasn't even limited to the ground and the sky. Go back further, past the point where anything resembling a human existed, to the earliest primates our entire lineage descends from, and there's a threat that may have shaped us more than any single predator on that list. A researcher named Lynn Isbell built a theory around one very unglamorous animal, the snake. Isbell noticed something odd about primate eyesight. Compared to most other mammals, primates have unusually sharp forward-facing vision and dedicated brain circuitry that lights up specifically in response to shapes like a coiled body or a patterned skin texture. Her theory is that millions of years of venomous and constricting snakes hunting early primates created a kind of evolutionary arms race. Primates that could spot a snake hidden in the leaf litter half a second faster survived to pass that sharper vision on. Snakes that stayed better hidden survived to pass their camouflage on. Isbell even found support for this in an unusual natural experiment. Lemurs on Madagascar, an island with essentially no venomous snakes, have measurably worse vision than primates that evolved somewhere snakes were a constant threat. If she's right, then long before any eagle, leopard, or hyena ever threatened a human ancestor, snakes were already quietly rewiring the primate brain toward vigilance. Two researchers, Donna Hart and Robert Sussman, spent years pulling all of this together into a single argument, laid out in a book called Man the Hunted. Their case is simple and a little humbling. For nearly the entire span of human evolution, early humans and their primate ancestors were regular prey for large predators, not occasional victims of bad luck, but a normal, expected part of the food chain, the way a rabbit or a deer is today. And their argument goes further than just describing danger. They argue this constant pressure of being hunted is what actually shaped many of the traits that make humans human. Think about what it takes to survive as a slow, clawless animal in a landscape full of things that can kill you. You can't outrun the leopard, so you stay in a group, because a leopard picks off stragglers, and a group means more eyes watching the tall grass and more voices ready to shout a warning. You can't outfight the hyena, so you develop alarm calls, specific sounds that mean danger, so the whole group reacts together instead of one person finding out the hard way. You can't fly like the eagle, so you learn to notice shadows crossing the ground above you, to feel uneasy in open spaces with no cover, to want your back against something solid. You can't outswim a crocodile, so you approach water carefully, scan the surface before kneeling, and teach your children to do the same every single time, without exception. None of that is really about hunting prey. It's about not becoming prey. Notice, too, how much of this points toward cooperation rather than individual strength. A single early human, no matter how clever, was still slower than a leopard and weaker than a hyena. But a group that trusted each other, that took turns keeping watch, that reacted instantly to one person's warning cry, could survive threats that would kill any one of them alone. Some researchers studying this period argue that predation pressure, more than hunting, is what first rewarded cooperation over pure individual toughness, favoring ancestors who were good at reading each other and acting together over ancestors who simply tried to fight or outrun the danger by themselves. Fire changed the equation. Once early humans controlled fire, a night spent out in the open stopped being an automatic gamble. Predators that had ruled the darkness for millions of years suddenly had a reason to keep their distance. Around that same fire, humans could also finally rest in something closer to safety, take turns watching, and start passing down knowledge, including, very likely, warnings. A story about what happened to someone who wandered off alone is exactly the kind of thing a group under constant predator pressure needs to tell, and needs the next generation to actually remember. Eventually, sharpened wood, coordinated throwing, and group tactics turned the relationship around. Humans didn't just stop being easy prey, they became predators themselves, and eventually the most dangerous animal most other species on the planet had ever encountered. But that shift took an extraordinarily long time, and it happened on top of millions of years spent as something else's meal, not before it. That earlier chapter didn't just disappear once the balance of power flipped. It's arguably still running quietly underneath a lot of ordinary human behavior. The instinct to sleep in a group rather than alone. The specific unease of an unfamiliar dark space with no light source. The way a sudden shadow or a rustle in tall grass still gets a reaction faster than conscious thought can catch up with. None of that behavior makes much sense if you only think of your ancestors as hunters. All of it makes sense if you remember that for most of human history, the far more common role was being hunted. So the next time you feel that small, specific flicker of unease, walking somewhere dark and unfamiliar, or catch yourself glancing upward at a sudden shadow passing overhead, you're not imagining a random modern jumpiness. You're feeling something considerably older. A body built, quite literally, by generations of ancestors who survived long enough to pass that caution on precisely because so many others around them didn't.